Even when you ain't got shit left, tell yourself it ain't over.
I ain't going out like that.
I don't want to live forever. I just want to die last.
We can't fix all that wrong shit.
Kanan just killed Marvin. Jukebox has no idea. And in episode 8, she is about to sit across from the same man who pulled the trigger, thank him, trust him, maybe even cry in front of him, while he says absolutely nothing. This is the moment everything either falls apart or gets buried forever. So does Jukebox find out the truth? Does Kanan finally crack? Or does this lie follow both of them all the way into power? Let's get into it. Episode 8 is where things get really uncomfortable, and I mean that in the best way possible for us as viewers, because we now know something that Jukebox doesn't. We know Kanan killed Marvin. She doesn't. And that gap between what we know and what she knows is exactly where all the tension in this episode is going to live. Every scene she shares with Kanan from this point forward is going to hit different, because we're watching her be vulnerable with the one person who took away the man that raised her. That's brutal, honestly, and it's exactly the kind of setup that makes this show what it is. Let's start with where we left Juke. She just lost Marvin. The letter, the briefcase, Pastor Evans standing there trying to hold it together while she reads whatever Marvin left behind. I do think this letter is going to be one of the most emotional moments of the season, because Marvin clearly knew something was coming. He set Amber up to be looked after. He made peace with people. That's not a coincidence. That's a man preparing for his own death, whether he saw it coming from Kanan specifically or just from the life he was living. So when Jukebox reads that letter, I think we're going to see her break in a way we haven't seen yet. Not angry breaking, not violent breaking, just quiet, hollow, gutted. And that's almost scarier than if she was screaming, because we know what comes after quiet. Now here's where episode 8 becomes must-watch television. Kanan is going to be right there. He's going to comfort her. He might even be the one who tells her Marvin is gone, or he's going to be one of the first people she runs to. And the entire time he's carrying this secret. I think we're going to get at least one scene where the camera just sits on Kanan's face while Jukebox is talking to him about finding Marvin's killer, and we're going to watch him have to perform grief and support for something he actually did. That is exactly the kind of dramatic irony this show thrives on, and honestly, it's the kind of scene that makes you want to scream at your screen because you know what she doesn't. So the big question going into this episode is simple. Does Kanan actually tell her? And I want to break down both sides of this, because there are real arguments for each direction the writers could take. Argument 1. Kanan comes clean. Now, on paper, this seems unlikely, because we've spent 5 seasons watching Kanan avoid the truth at all costs. We've talked about this before. Kanan has a serious problem with cognitive dissonance. He does not like accepting when he's wrong, and he definitely does not like accepting responsibility for the damage he causes. But here's the thing, Marvin wasn't some outside enemy. Marvin was basically family to Jukebox. If Kanan is going to try and keep any kind of real relationship with her going forward, especially with what we know happens in power, there's an argument that guilt eventually eats at him enough that he either tells her directly or he lets it slip in a moment of weakness. Kanan isn't great under pressure when the people closest to him start asking direct questions. We saw that with Rock. We saw hints of that with Marvin himself. So there's a version of this episode where Jukebox pushes hard enough, asks the right question at the right moment, and Kanan just cannot hold the lie together anymore. Argument 2, and honestly the one I lean towards, Kanan never tells her. Not directly anyway. Because we know how this story ends up in power. We know Jukebox and Kanan have a relationship built on loyalty, on history, on her nursing him back to health, on her telling him he did the right thing killing Sean because, and I'm paraphrasing what we've heard her say, Sean was a pawn, you sacrifice pawns for the greater good. That's the kind of loyalty Juke has for Kanan later in life. If she knew right now in Raising Kanan that he killed the man who raised her, I genuinely don't think that relationship survives. I don't think there's a version of Jukebox who forgives that, no matter how much time passes. So if the writers want that power dynamic to make sense, and Hailey Kilgore has already confirmed she isn't going to be part of Power Origins, then episode 8 might actually be the last time we ever see this version of Juke. which means this could be the final word on whether she ever finds out. That leads me to the image that's already been floating around from episode 8. Juke and Kanan sitting across from each other, and based on everything in that shot, it does not look like a scene where she knows the truth. Her expression isn't rage, it's not confrontation. If anything, it looks like two people who are grieving together, not two people on opposite sides of a secret that's about to explode. So my read on this, and I could be wrong, is that the show is setting up a version where Jukebox goes into her final episode still believing Kanan had nothing to do with Marvin's death. Which honestly might be even more tragic than if she found out, because it means she leaves New York, or leaves this chapter of her life, still trusting the person responsible for one of the biggest losses she's ever experienced. But let's not pretend this is simple, because there's another layer here, and that's Rock. Rock already knows what Kanan is capable of covering up. Rock already cleaned up messes for this family before, going all the way back to the start of the series. If Rock finds out, or already suspects, the way Kanan operates when he's protecting his own interests, there's a real chance Rock becomes the one holding this secret too. And that's a terrifying position for Rock to be in, because now you've got two people, Kanan and Rock, both aware of the truth, both choosing to let Jukebox walk around grieving a man neither of them will tell her the real story about. If that's the direction this goes, episode 8 isn't just about Juke's grief. It's about watching a small circle of people build a wall of lies around her without her even knowing it exists. Now let's talk about what Juke actually does in this episode, because grief alone isn't going to stop her from asking questions. This is a smart girl. She proved that already this season when she did her own digging around Fame's death, when she tracked down Snaps and Pop, when she put pieces together that even Kanan couldn't. So there is no version of this where she just accepts Marvin is dead and moves on without trying to find out who did it. I fully expect her to start asking around. I expect her to go to people who might know something. Maybe she talks to Flossie, who clearly had some kind of respect for Marvin despite their business tension. Maybe she leans on Pastor Evans for more information about what Marvin was worried about before he died. And every single one of these conversations is a potential landmine, because any one of these people could accidentally say something that points her back towards Kanan. This is where the suspense in episode 8 really comes from. It's not going to be a shootout. It's not going to be some big dramatic reveal necessarily. It's going to be quieter than that. It's going to be Jukebox getting closer and closer to the truth, through conversations, through small details that don't add up, through Kanan's own behavior giving something away without him meaning to. That kind of slow burn tension is honestly more effective than a big confrontation scene, because it keeps you watching every single interaction wondering if this is the moment she figures it out. And I do think we're going to see a very different Jukebox by the end of this episode, regardless of whether she learns the truth about Kanan. We already got a glimpse of this in the trailer, that colder look in her eyes, the version of her that feels closer to the Jukebox we eventually meet in Power. Marvin was the last thing keeping her tethered to any kind of softness. He was the reason she stayed cautious, the reason she held back from going all the way into this life. With him gone, there's nothing left pulling her back. So even if Kanan's secret stays buried, I think we're going to watch Jukebox make a decision or two in this episode that pushes her further into the world she eventually becomes fully part of in Power. That could mean handling business herself instead of relying on anyone else. That could mean cutting ties with people she feels have failed her. That could even mean starting to plan her exit from New York. Speaking of leaving, I want to touch on the timeline question again, because I think it matters for how we read episode 8. We know there's roughly a 9-year jump between where Raising Kanan ends and where Power Origins begins, 1993 into 2002. So even if Juke doesn't leave New York in this exact episode, the show doesn't need her to. She's got almost a decade of time where she could leave at any point, come back, cross paths with Ghost and Tommy on the streets, the way both of them clearly remembered later. So episode 8 might not be a goodbye to New York specifically, but I do think there's a real chance it's a goodbye to this version of the character. The teenage Jukebox, the one still capable of being broken by a letter in a briefcase. After this episode, whatever comes next for her probably happens off-screen, in that 9-year gap, shaped by whatever decisions she makes here. Now let's talk about Kanan's side of this equation, because he's not just sitting still either. If he's smart, and he usually thinks he's smarter than he actually is, he's going to want to keep Jukebox close, specifically so he can control what she finds out. That's very Kanan behavior. He doesn't just lie and walk away, he manages the lie. He inserts himself into the investigation, offers to help her find out who did it, maybe even points her in a direction that isn't him. That would be a brutal thing to watch. Kanan actively helping steer Jukebox away from the truth while pretending to help her find justice for Marvin. If the show goes there, that's going to be one of the most uncomfortable dynamics of the entire series because we're watching manipulation happen in real time to someone who trusts him completely. There's also Breeze to consider here. With Snaps and Pop gone, the board has been cleared for Breeze and Kanan to take fuller control, and that changes the pressure on Kanan going into this episode. He's got more to protect now, more reason to keep things clean, keep people close, keep secrets buried. If Jukebox starts asking too many questions at the exact moment he's trying to consolidate power with Breeze, that's a serious problem for him. So there's a business reason on top of the personal reason for Kanan to make sure this secret never gets out. That gives the episode another layer of stakes beyond just the emotional weight of Juke's grief. I also want to bring up something that's been nagging at me since episode 7, and that's Crystal. She was barely mentioned this season despite being someone Juke had real history with. Someone Pop was also responsible for killing. If episode 8 finally brings Crystal's name back into the conversation, even briefly, I think that adds more fuel to Jukebox's need for answers and justice. It reminds us, and reminds her, that revenge doesn't stop just because Snaps and Pop are gone. There's still unfinished business tied to people she's lost, and Marvin is just the newest name on that list. By the time we get to the end of episode 8, here's what I expect. I think Jukebox is going to be visibly transformed, colder, sharper, more guarded than we've ever seen her. I think Kanan's secret survives this episode, at least on the surface, but I don't think it survives cleanly. I think there's going to be at least one moment where the truth almost slips out, where Kanan says something or does something that makes you as a viewer hold your breath because you think this is it, this is the moment she finds out. And I think the show is going to use that tension deliberately, because it sets up exactly the kind of unresolved, simmering conflict that could either explode in the final episodes of the season or get carried forward into whatever comes next for these characters. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Jukebox ever finds out the truth, whether it's in the final episode of Season 5 or somewhere down the line before Power Origins begins? Do you think Kanan tells her himself, or does she figure it out on her own? And if she does find out, do you think that relationship survives at all, given everything we already know about how close they end up being in Power? Drop your theories in the comments. I read every single one of them, and let me know which direction you think the writers are going to take this. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.